Hey, what's up, everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth again. So today, gonna do the what's next on Brian Castano, the undefeated WBO super welterweight champion at 154. He fought Jermell Charlo for the undisputed championship. They attempted to unify all four belts and become the seventh man in the four belt era to become an undisputed champion in a division. And neither one of them got it done because the fight was declared a draw. Now, personally, I had Castano winning the fight 7 rounds to 5, 115, 113. But, two of the judges had it going for one for Castano, one for Charlo, and then the other judge, and the other judge had it a draw. But, it was a good fight. It was a really good fight. Charlo hurt Castano early, and then after he hurt him, Castano seemingly took the fight over, to be honest. He really outworked Charlo. And after 9 rounds, I had Castano winning the fight 7 rounds to 2. But Charlo swept those last 3 rounds, made it close. He made it 7-5. And, on my card. But, there were some close rounds in there. And, obviously the judges had it thought differently. So fight is a draw. I don't think that's a horrible call. I don't think Castano got robbed. It was a close fight, but it was a very good one. And now the big question is, what's next for Brian Castano as he holds on to his WBO belt? But what is next for Brian Castano? 1 second. So for me, we'll run through the top 10. Number 1 is Charlo in a rematch. I mean, obviously that's what everybody wants to see, and as do I, but can that fight be made is the big question. And the truth is, I don't know. I think it can be made between those two, but they have to figure out their mandatory situation. All champions have mandatory obligations, and I know Charlo's already been ordered by the IBF to make his mandatory against the undefeated number 1 contender. I forget the guy's name. Because he's not that big of a name, I doubt Charlo's going to want to fight him. He might have to ask, the IBF to make an exception, let that undefeated fighter fight the next highest rated contender for the interim belt, and then the winner of Charlo Castano would have to fight then. Also, the WBC has their mandatory with Erickson Lubin. Now, the WBC, a lot more corrupt, doesn't enforce their mandatories as often, so they might not make Charlo face Lubin in a rematch, but it could happen. So it's kind of up in the air. We don't know the mandatory situation in the WBO right now. I know Castano and Teixeira. Castano was the mandatory when he beat Teixeira in February, and then he fights Charlo. So he might not have an obligation for a mandatory title fight until like early next year. So I think he's a little bit more in the good, but we have to see. So obviously the rematch is what people want. I personally feel that their governing bodies would allow an undisputed title rematch to take place between these two fighters, and they would just let their guys fight for the interim belt or something like that, but we don't know for sure. So I'm hoping that's the fight that gets made, but we'll see. Okay, number 2, Castano's number 2. Number 3 is Erickson Lubin. Castano fighting Lubin. 1 second. Now, I'm leaning towards the no because I'm not sure Castano would want to take the risk against Lubin. Now, I think Lubin would accept the fight if the WBC didn't enforce the mandatory on Charlo, and Charlo ended up going and fighting his IBF mandatory, and then Lubin's left out in the cold. Now, I think he would accept the fight with Brian Castano, but would Castano want that fight himself? I mean, he could. Castano seems fearless, but if a rematch with Charlo is waiting in the wings, do you want to risk it against a good southpaw boxer like Lubin? I don't know. I think it's possible. They're both PBC guys, but I'm leaning towards the less likely, but I think it's a good matchup, so we'll see. Number 4 would be a rematch with Erislandy Lara. Now, Lara, all of a sudden, wanted to fight Castano in a rematch. I think he would fight Castano in a rematch. I do. Would Castano want to take that risk and take Lara on again? They fought to a draw a couple years back, and a lot of people were surprised by that. You know, Castano unseated him, but Castano's style is made to win, and I mean, if Lara wanted that fight, I think the fight could be made very easily, and I think Castano would go in probably the favorite into the rematch. So I think Castano would be, if has a fight in between and he doesn't have to fight his mandatory, why not take on Lara and erase that draw on your resume by beating him in a rematch? You know, Lara's still a big name, and Castano would be fighting to grab the secondary belt that Lara holds. Not that holds much weight, but still, I think he would fight him just to extract some revenge. So I think that fight is possible between Castano and Lara next. Number 5, Jarrett Hurd. I don't see it. Hurd, I don't think he wants to jump back into 154 coming off of a loss to Luis Arias. I don't think he wants to jump back into 154 like that. So I don't think he would fight Castano. I don't think Castano would really want to fight him coming off of a loss. So I'm going to lean towards the no. It's possible, though, because they are both PBC guys. Number 6 is Tony Harrison, the former champ. I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I don't think Harrison wants anything to do with Brian Castano right now. I'm not ruling it out just because they're both PBC guys. But again, Harrison's had a draw with Bryant Perella in his return bout. I think he probably wants to shake off some more rust before he throws himself back in the mix like that. Again, I wouldn't completely rule it out just because it would be a title shot for Harrison. And, now that Castano's really established himself with that draw against Charlo, they might say, hey, might want to feed a former champion like Harrison and in against a guy like Castano, and they might pay Harrison some good money to do it. So I wouldn't completely rule it out. Number 7 is Tim Tszyu. I know he's highly rated by the WBO. I don't think the WBO is going to mandate Castano to fight somebody, though. So I'm leaning towards, I don't think Castano would consider that fight either. So I'm going to say no. Him against number 8, Magomed, whatever the guy is, name is, I don't think so. I don't think Castano's considering that guy at all. So I don't see that fight. Number 9, Sebastian Fundora. That's a mismatch in terms of height and everything for Castano. Not to say Castano wouldn't go for it. Castano's a hog, but he is much shorter arm reach, arm length than Fundora, and it's a risky fight that he doesn't have to take right now. So I don't think he goes after that one. And then finally at number 10 is Jason Rosario. I don't think Rosario would want that fight coming off back-to-back knockout losses. I just don't see it. Castano might do it just to, keep his feet wet, but I honestly don't think Castano would want that fight. I think he'd have that fight forced upon him, and I think he would totally overlook Rosario, and that might be a mistake. But I don't think Castano would just be interested, so I'm going to say no. So if I had to choose what Castano's going to do next, I'm leaning towards the rematch with Charlo. But if that doesn't happen, I really think there's a good chance of him and Erislandy Lara rematching. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. So I wouldn't be surprised by that. Other possible matchups would be like Erickson Lubin and Tony Harrison, stuff like that, But I really think the PBC and Showtime and the governing bodies are going to try to get together and allow these two guys to fight. Again, it makes sense. I hope Castano gets the rematch for the undisputed title, and we can determine who the true number 1 guy at 154 is. So that's it. That's the what's next on WBO 154-pound super welterweight champion Brian Castano. I hope you guys enjoyed it. True boxing. You've been hit with the truth.